A single drop of blood fell from my split lip and soaked into the custom silk of my dress. Amanda stood over me, her pristine white wedding gown rustling as she lowered her trembling, stinging hand. My parents stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking the only door out of the bridal suite. My mother threw a crumpled piece of paper onto the vanity. "Sign it," she hissed. "Sign over the $650,000 condo, or we lock you in this room until the reception is over." I tasted copper. I swallowed hard, wiped the blood from my chin with the back of my hand, and forced a slow, freezing smile. They wanted my home. They were about to get a federal indictment wrapped in a wedding ribbon. I am Shreya, 32 years old, and a high-end real estate consultant. For 8 grueling years, I clawed my way up the property ladder, negotiating deals and saving every single commission check to buy my own piece of the world. My condo was my sanctuary. The entire nightmare unraveled just hours before the ceremony. A careless financial document left open on my father's laptop exposed the rot underneath their polished image. His business was actively drowning in $200,000 of secret, crippling debt. Ruin was breathing down their necks. They needed a lifeline. My sister's groom was their perfect target. Jacob came from conservative, deeply entrenched old money. His parents were not fools. They demanded an ironclad prenuptial agreement for Amanda, a legal wall keeping my parents away from their family wealth. There was only one loophole. The agreement could be completely bypassed if Amanda brought a matching physical asset into the marriage. So? My parents lied. They sat across from Jacob's aristocratic family, sipped expensive champagne, and claimed my $650,000 condo was a lavish dowry they had purchased for their golden child. The sheer, breathtaking audacity made my stomach churn. It went beyond a simple lie. They had set up a new home fund website, actively scamming over 200 wedding guests out of tens of thousands of dollars to renovate a home Amanda had absolutely no legal right to. Years ago, they quietly drained my entire college savings account to cover one of my father's reckless investments. I spent 4 years working graveyard shifts, eating instant ramen, and shivering in a freezing dorm room because I could not afford a winter coat. They broke my spirit back then. They taught me that my only value was as their financial cushion. But today, standing in this bridal suite with the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, I was the one holding the hammer. I had marched into this room to demand an immediate end to the online charade. I expected pathetic excuses. Instead, I stepped right into a calculated ambush. The heavy oak door clicked shut. My mother locked the deadbolt, and Amanda swung her hand. The air in the bridal suite was so thick it choked me. A sharp knock broke the silence. The door cracked open, and Uncle Thomas slipped inside, clutching his official notary stamp like a weapon. He was my father's oldest drinking buddy, a man who would gladly bend the law for a cheap favor. My father snatched the quitclaim deed from the vanity and shoved it against my chest. "Do not make a scene, Shreya." His voice trembled with raw, suffocating pressure. "Think of the family's honor. Just sign the damn paper." Amanda stood behind him, her chest heaving, a triumphant smirk breaking through her pristine bridal makeup. She thought she had won. They all thought they had finally broken the stubborn workhorse and extracted the ultimate payout. My pulse pounded in my ears. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to lunge across the room and return that slap with interest. My fists clenched so hard my fingernails dug deep, painful half-moons into my palms. Striking her would feel incredible for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the heavy oak doors would fly open, the wealthy guests would gasp, and I would forever be branded the hysterical, jealous spinster who ruined a fairy tale wedding. They would control the narrative. But this piece of paper? This was not a surrender. It was a loaded gun, and they were pointing it squarely at their own heads. My mind shifted from the bleeding sister to the seasoned real estate consultant. They assumed my silence was submission. They had absolutely no idea they were aggressively demanding a one-way ticket to a federal courtroom. A quick slap leaves a temporary bruise. A forged signature under a corrupt notary seal? That strips away freedom, reputation, and every cent they ever claimed to own. I let out a slow, steady breath. The burning rage in my chest instantly dissolved into a terrifying, icy calm. I reached out and plucked the heavy silver pen from my father's sweating fingers. I held Amanda's gazette. I gave her a chilling, dead-eyed smile. The ink glided smoothly across the thick parchment. I signed my name perfectly, deliberately, knowing exactly the legal avalanche I had just unleashed. The rest of the wedding went perfectly. Amanda floated across the marble dance floor, wearing the radiant, smug glow of an absolute victor. My parents clinked crystal glasses with Jacob's wealthy family, practically salivating over the financial rescue they thought they had just secured. I played my part. I stood in the shadows, sipping my dry champagne, letting them celebrate their stolen prize. 3 days later, my father walked into the county clerk's office downtown. He marched right up to the front desk and handed over the thick parchment. The clerk reviewed it, picked up an ink stamp, and brought it down with a heavy, hollow thud. In that exact fraction of a second, the steel jaws of my trap snapped shut. My father thought he had just officially transferred my home to Amanda. He had actually just handed the government a forged document. Years ago, when I bought that condo, I ruthlessly protected my investment. My personal name is nowhere on the property title. The deed belongs entirely to S Holdings LLC, a corporate entity I created and solely control. My personal, rushed signature on their forced quitclaim deed meant absolutely nothing. It was a legally void scrap of paper. My parents knew nothing about corporate real estate law. By taking that worthless paper, slapping Uncle Thomas's corrupt notary seal on it, and officially submitting it to a government agency, they crossed a massive, irreversible line. They escalated a nasty family shakedown into felony title fraud. They wanted to play high-stakes games to impress Jacob's family and bail out their drowning business. But they forgot they were dealing with a professional. They walked blindly into a federal crime. And I held every single receipt. I hit send. The email bypassed my sister and landed straight in Jacob's private inbox. No emotional paragraphs. No apologies. Just 3 pristine attachments. The official tax records proving my corporate entity owned the condo. The federal wire fraud statutes highlighting the exact penalties for soliciting money under false pretenses. The screenshots of their fake dowry fund. Jacob comes from a world where reputation is absolute currency. A scandal like this would completely destroy his family's pristine name. He opened that email on his luxury honeymoon in the Caribbean. He packed his bags exactly 1 hour later. He threw the printed documents onto the unmade hotel bed, walked out the door, and instructed his family's attorneys to file for an immediate annulment. The golden ticket went up in smoke. Amanda flew back home in a blind, humiliated rage. Her perfect, wealthy marriage collapsed before the ink on the certificate even dried. She refused to blame her own greed. She blamed me. She wanted to hurt me, to tear down the sanctuary I built. She drove straight to my parents' house and snatched the old brass spare key they had kept hidden for years. She planned a violent invasion. She would let herself into my home, smash my belongings into dust, and claim squatters' rights just to drag me through years of exhausting, expensive housing court hell. She thought she was a mastermind. She forgot my entire career revolves around protecting high-end real estate. I knew exactly where that spare key was. I deliberately left the old brass cylinder in the front door. I simply upgraded the digital infrastructure behind it. I activated containment mode on my smart home system, the morning of her wedding. Amanda slid the old key into the lock. The door swung open. She stepped over the threshold, picked up a heavy crystal vase from the entryway table, and shattered it violently against the hardwood floor. A sharp, mechanical clack cut through the settling dust. 3 heavy steel smart deadbolts slammed into the doorframe behind her, instantly disabling the manual override. The system registered an unauthorized entry with property damage and triggered a verified video dispatch directly to the local police precinct. Her triumphant sneer melted off her face. Through the live camera feed on my phone, I studied her panic. Her eyes darted wildly. Sweat beaded on her forehead, ruining her flawless makeup. She lunged at the door, grabbing the brass handle and rattling it with both hands. The steel held firm. She pounded her fists against the solid wood, her chest heaving, her mouth wide open in a breathless, hysterical scream. Red and blue lights began flashing against the front windows. Sirens tore through the quiet street, growing louder by the second. She backed away from the door, her hands shaking violently. She was no longer the untouchable, radiant bride. She was a cornered animal in a steel cage, staring blankly at the walls as the heavy footsteps of law enforcement rushed up the front steps. 2 minutes later, the heavy wooden door splintered inward. Uniformed officers swarmed the entryway. Amanda's hysterical screaming turned into pathetic, breathless sobs as they forced her wrists behind her back. The cold metal handcuffs clicked shut over her designer honeymoon bracelets. The lead officer read her rights, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Breaking and entering. Felony vandalism. While they dragged my sister out of my building, my phone buzzed on my desk. It was the federal investigator handling the title fraud case. The dominoes were falling fast. Uncle Thomas, the loyal family friend and corrupt notary, was already in federal custody. He lasted exactly 10 minutes in the interrogation room. To save his own government pension, he flipped completely. He handed the authorities every single text message, voicemail, and email, proving my parents orchestrated the entire forged property transfer. I sat back in my leather office chair and watched the live security feed on my monitor. Amanda stumbled into the back of a squad car, her mascara running down her face in thick, black rivers. For years, I imagined screaming at them. I imagined demanding an apology, begging them to finally see my worth. Watching the squad car pull away, I realized something profound. True justice is entirely silent. It does not require a screaming match in a crowded room. It does not require trading insults with people who only view you as an asset. The wicked simply drown in the consequences of their own calculated greed. I built an airtight legal wall, stepped back, and let their massive, unchecked entitlement do all the heavy lifting. They built their own prison. I just handed them the keys. The justice system does not care about your wedding dress, and federal judges do not care about your family honor. Amanda stood in front of a county judge 3 months later. She pled guilty to felony breaking and entering and felony vandalism. The court sentenced her to 3 years of strict probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay $18,000 in criminal restitution for the damages to my smart home system and the shattered antique vase. My parents faced a much darker reality. Federal court is remarkably cold. Facing decades in prison for federal title fraud, they took a plea deal. They avoided a jail cell. But the financial slaughter was absolute. The judge ordered them to pay a federal fine of $75,000 and forced them to fully refund the $42,000 they had illegally solicited through their fraudulent New Home Fund campaign. The social execution was even swifter. Jacob's aristocratic family ensured the annulment was brutal and entirely public. Within 48 hours, my parents were quietly expelled from their country club. Their business, already suffocating under massive debt, completely collapsed under the weight of the federal scandal. 6 months passed. The winter thawed into a quiet, warm spring. I was sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life, when my phone screen lit up. A voicemail from my mother. I pressed play and held the speaker to my ear. It was a 3-minute rambling mess of tears and manipulation. She told me they were losing the house. She told me Amanda was working a minimum wage retail job and crying herself to sleep every night. Then came the inevitable guilt trip, delivered in a fragile, trembling whisper. She told me she was still my mother. She told me they only did it to secure the family's future. I listened to the entire recording. I waited for the familiar spike of anxiety in my chest. I waited for the heavy, suffocating guilt that used to control my every decision. Nothing came. I felt absolutely nothing. I pulled the phone away from my ear, tapped the screen, and hit delete. I poured myself another glass of wine and went back inside. They were simply ghosts to me now. My apartment is no longer a battlefield. It is a sanctuary. I hosted Thanksgiving this year. There was no polished silverware hiding fake smiles. No subtle insults passed across the gravy boat. My dining table was surrounded by my chosen family. I sat next to colleagues who had mentored me through my toughest deals, and friends who actually celebrated my success instead of plotting to steal it. The room smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary, and the walls echoed with genuine, unrestrained laughter. You see, toxic families rely on an invisible contract. They weaponize the word family to turn the responsible child into a lifelong servant. They demand blind loyalty, and they ruthlessly punish your success because your independence threatens their control. They expect you to act as their endless financial and emotional cushion, absorbing their failures while they shower praise on the golden child. If you are carrying that heavy, invisible burden right now, I need you to understand 3 fundamental rules of survival. First, blood does not make you family. Mutual respect does. Cutting off abusers is not a tragedy. It is an act of profound self-love and necessary survival. You are entirely allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Second, your silence against their exploitation is complicity in your own destruction. If I had given in to keep the peace in that bridal suite, I would have bankrupted my own soul to pay off their debts. Refusing to be their doormat is not being selfish. It is being strong. Third, the ultimate revenge is structural, not emotional. Do not fight a pig in the mud. Do not exhaust yourself screaming for an apology you will never receive. Use the law, use your intelligence, and build ironclad boundaries. Step back, and let their own massive entitlement build their prison. Have you ever been told to set yourself on fire just to keep your family warm? When did you finally decide to walk away? Share your story in the comments below, because your realization today might be the exact lifeline someone else needs to finally break free. I am Shreya, and I am free.